Salam sejahtera. Saya Nizam Ismail mengalu-alukan anda ke episod pertama Wicara yang akan mengupas isu-isu pilihan raya umum 2025. Ia merupakan pilihan raya umum yang bersejarah, iaitu pilihan raya umum pertama yang diterajui oleh Perdana Menteri Lawrence Wong. Pilihan raya ini juga melihat 97 kerusi parlimen di 33 kawasan undi yang akan ditandingi. Hari ini adalah hari penamaan calon. Ini adalah masa kuasa beralih kepada para pengundi untuk melaksanakan hak asasi mereka. Pada sesi ini kita berbesar hati kerana dapat bersama tetamu-tetamu kita, iaitu Pak Abdul Rahman Muhammad Said, pengasas bersama Suara Melayu Singapura. Selamat datang Pak Rahman.
Terima kasih.
Encik Sudir Thomas Vadakev, penulis, pengamat politik dan pengasas JOM.
Terima kasih.
Welcome. Encik Daman Huri Abbas, konsultan pendidikan dan juga calon Parti Demokratik Singapura SDP.
Terima kasih.
Terlebih dahulu, terima kasih kerana sudi memberi pandangan anda dan membincangkan isu-isu penting untuk masyarakat Melayu Islam di Singapura. Thank you very much. Jadi kita akan mengamalkan dua bahasa untuk episod ini dan juga seterusnya. So I'll start with you, Sudir.
Yeah.
Thanks for being with us. So,
And maaf bahasa Melayu saya tak begitu bagus, but thanks for your dua bahasa.
So today is nomination day and there have been more than a couple of surprises. Chief of which is the redrawn Marine Parade Bredel GRC. There was a surprise walkover in favour of the PAP. Of course, you hear a million hearts being broken. But does this reflect the fact that maybe the Workers' Party didn't quite get it right and it's not quite ready to take over the mantle? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, as a citizen in a democracy, I was actually very disappointed. I remember the first few elections in Singapore, I couldn't vote. It was a walkover. I think 2011, if I'm not wrong, was the first time in decades that we had no walkovers, right? So this year, having a walkover almost feels like a step back, right? So from the point of view of democracy, it's quite sad. And in terms of the Workers' Party's strategy, I think people who were hoping for more expansionism, more ambition from the Workers' Party might be disappointed, in particularly, in the fact that people like Pritam and Sylvia, maybe even Gerald Giam, have not moved out of Aljunied. Yes, I think there is a measure of disappointment.
Turning to Punggol GRC, that's another interesting GRC to watch. Gan Kim Yong has moved across, from Choa Chu Kang to Punggol, and then he's handling a team, and he's being pitted against Workers' Party rising star Mr. Harpreet Singh, along with his colleagues Alexis Dang, Jackson Au, Siti Alia. So, what are your thoughts about the moving of the chess pieces from Choa Chu Kang to Punggol? How will the dynamics of a new GRC play out there?
Okay, so I think Harpreet, who's by far probably, no disrespect to all the other new opposition candidates, but in terms of his credentials, Harpreet is clearly the one that stands out above the rest. Often been called a star catch for the opposition. Somebody who could have easily worn PAP colours if he wanted to. So I think. And he was seen walking the ground in Marine Parade a lot. So a lot of people, including myself, were speculating that he might be in Marine Parade. So I think to understand the whole sequence of the chess moves, I think the original one is Harpreet moving to Punggol. Not moving, but being fielded in Punggol, right? Then that, it's probably testament to how worried the PAP is that once again they felt they had to parachute in a heavyweight, right? And so then you had this whole kind of merry-go-round happening, right? Gan Kim Yong went there, Tan See Leng went to the west. I was in a chat earlier today, and I was asking Walid Abdullah about, does this happen in democracies normally, where you have people flying across the whole country to go and compete somewhere else? So I think Walid's answer is not often, but there certainly are examples, and in Malaysia, for example, it happens In Malaysia, it happens where people candidates move across to go and head off fights. Sorry, I'm not talking very long, but just last point is that
New GRC. How will that play out?
You mean Punggol, right?
Punggol, yes.
Yeah. I suspect it'll be one of the closest fights, And Gan Kim Yong you know, he's been moved there, and just like Heng Swee Keat in 2020 being parachuted into East Coast, he may end up being a sacrificial lamb lah, you know. And Heng Swee Keat won in 2020, but Gan Kim Yong, we don't know. Yeah,
It's a high stakes game. He's DPM. Yeah.
exactly. But maybe he wants to retire also. So as he's I think expressed before in different ways. Yeah.
Okay. Tuan Damanhuri, selamat datang. Jadi kita sekarang di era media sosial yang mana suara bantahan atau prihatin dapat disebarkan dengan pantas sekali. Misalnya kenyataan Kelvin Cheng tentang Palestin yang mengguris hati ramai dalam masyarakat Melayu Islam kita. Jadi apakah respon para pengundi Melayu pada pendapat anda?
Ya, pada pandangan saya, isu ini akan banyak mempengaruhi bagaimana masyarakat Melayu akan pangkah undi mereka di pilihan raya ini, kerana hakikatnya ialah sebuah masyarakat minoriti telah diguris perasaannya dengan begitu perit atau pahit, dan ia sebenarnya bukan isu, ialah konteksnya ialah Kelvin Cheng dan ucapan dia, tapi ialah layanan yang ditunjukkan oleh pemerintah apabila masyarakat Melayu menyuarakan keprihatinan mereka terhadap apa yang telah diucapkan, dan setelah itu sibuk di media, perasaan ini dikongsi sama dalam beberapa platform. Jadi suara ini seolah-olah tidak diindahkan oleh pemerintah, dan kebetulan ia kena dengan timing pilihan raya. Jadi saya merasa adalah manasabah untuk kita buat sesuatu andaian bahawa akan ada kesan dari undi yang akan dilakukan oleh masyarakat Melayu. Kerana benda ni belum lagi dapat dibendung masyarakat kita.
Jadi pada pandangan Tuan Damanhuri, isu yang menyakiti ramai pengundi ialah respon pihak pemerintah atau ketidakrespon pihak pemerintah.
Ya, betul. Cara mereka membuat, saya jujurlah, ini cara mereka seolah-olah ketepikan kemarahan masyarakat apabila satu persatu kepimpinan PAP ke depan untuk apa yang ditanggapi oleh masyarakat sebagai alasan-alasan yang ya, kalau kita nak lihat dari perspektif management damage control, ini jelas sekali tau, ini dalam bentuk damage control, dan bukan suatu yang dan kita tahu kan sekarang si Kelvin Cheng tu dia sudah digam untuk beberapa hari tapi masyarakat Melayu bukan masyarakat yang bodoh. Kita tahu bahawa telah ada kes-kes lain di mana individu-individu tertentu tu telah dihukum dengan cara yang lebih tegas. Malahan apa yang diungkapkan oleh mereka, kalau dibandingkan apa yang dikatakan oleh Kelvin Cheng, lebih tidak begitu parah. Jadi takkan kita sebagai masyarakat umum yang dapat bezakan dan bandingkan tak boleh buat keputusan buat ini sesuatu yang tak betul dan saya rasa kalau sebagai seorang politik dalam dunia ini, satu bahasa yang parti politik akan faham ialah apa mereka diajar di pilihan raya apabila mereka ditolak oleh pengundi. Itu satu sahaja cara untuk parti politik dididik.
Okay, saya rasa isu ini akan menjadi lebih buruk sebelum ia menjadi lebih baik. It's going to get worse before it gets better. Dan sebahagian besar daripada gejalanya ialah peranan dan kuasa social media itu sendiri. Kita maklum dalam menggunakan Facebook ataupun WhatsApp ataupun TikTok, social media mempunyai kuasa untuk mengembangkan, untuk menyebarkan sesuatu maklumat itu dengan lebih luas, dengan lebih meluas. Kita cuma hanya perlu berkongsi, kita share sesuatu maklumat itu dan ia akan meluas, melata langsung. Ini menjadi satu gejala yang merebak dan sukar untuk dibendung. Maka kerana itu, kalau ia tidak dibendung pada tahap awal, ia akan menjadi lebih buruk, lebih genting di masa-masa mendatang. Ini kuasa sosial media yang perlu digunakan, sama ada sebagai satu sistem kontrol ataupun sebagai satu kelebihan untuk rakyat jelata. Kalau dulu pilihan raya dulu banyak maklumat itu dikontrol oleh pihak akhbar ataupun media biasa. Tapi dengan sosial media tidak ada yang menjadi controller, maka maklumat boleh disebarkan dengan lebih luas, dengan lebih bebas.
Pak Rahman, jadi kamu penduduk di Tampines, orang Tampines. Jadi mari kita fokus pada Tampines GRC. Di sini Tuan Faizal Manap telah pun berhijrah daripada kawasan Undi Aljunied ke Tampines. Dan kita saksikan tentangan 4 hala luar biasa. Apakah ini menjadi kelebihan untuk parti PAP pada pendapat anda?
Hadirnya 4 ataupun 3 parti pembangkang di Tampines untuk melawan PAP itu pada dasarnya ataupun pada kasarnya mungkin menjadi satu advantage atau kelebihan, tapi tidak semestinya ia menjadi satu rintangan. Saya rasa para pengundi di Singapura umumnya dan di Tampines khususnya lebih bijak dalam membuat pilihan mereka masing-masing. Kita lihat 2 daripada parti politik ini nampaknya timbul hanya di ambang pilihan raya. Mereka macam tidur sepanjang 5 tahun sebelum datangnya PRU. Dan ini akan dilihat sebagai parti-parti yang tidak serius di mata pengundi. Kita lihat battle royal, tentangan yang besar itu adalah antara PAP dengan WP, dengan Workers' Party. Yang lagi 2 tu ada para penganalisis menganggap mereka sebagai parti nyamuk. Jadi pengacau aja. Tapi tentangan yang besar itu antara PAP dengan Workers' Party.
Okey, jadi dari Tampines kita turun ke East Coast. Sudhir, you mentioned DPM Heng Swee Keat, coming or parachuting or being positioned into East Coast previously. Not sure how much of the East Coast plan has been implemented so far, but now the PAP team is being led by Mr. Edwin Tong, and Heng Swee Keat has just announced that he is not going to take part in these general elections. Question to you: do you think Heng Swee Keat's absence, especially he was the one who was championing the East Coast plan, will have any bearing on the PAP's chances?
I don't think so. I think there are a couple of things. The PAP probably expected a very fierce challenge from the WP there, and the WP has probably not sent the kind of heavyweight that I think some people thought they might send right? So 2020, the so-called heavyweight was Nicole Seah, right? Who came very close to winning, and I think Edwin Tong is fairly popular, so and apparently he's been endorsed by Joe Schooling as well, and there are other varied supporters of the PAP's East Coast team. I don't know if Heng Swee Keat not being there necessarily makes a difference because I also feel he was parachuted there in 2020. I think it would be a bigger deal with the current team if, for instance, one of their WP big hitters had gone there as well. But certainly the East Coast ground, as we know, is along with the other constituencies in the East, including Tampines, including Marine Parade, it's probably one that is more ripe for voting opposition . So I wouldn't be surprised if it's close, But I from looking at the candidates, I suspect the PAP might still be able to win. That's my reading of it right now lah.
Okay, let's move from the East Coast to the other side, the West Coast. West Coast and Jurong West GRC. And we are seeing a rematch again between PAP's team led by Desmond Lee and Dr. Tan Cheng Bok's PSP team. Now, the PSP seems to have concentrated all its heavyweights there. Dr. Tan Cheng Bok, Leong Man Wai, Hazel Phua, and others as well. So do you think this strategy of concentrating the big wigs or the big hitters there will work in PSP's favour?
Well, I mean, I guess we have a bit of proof for that in that it worked for WP in 2011 lah, right? They put all their big hitters in Aljunied and they won. They beat a team with Zainal, right? With Giorgio, with Ong Ye Kang. You know, they beat a really big team. So if you look at this year's contest, now, I mean, there are a couple of dynamics we have to talk about lah. The first one is the quite extreme gerrymandering, right? The way they makan Taraman's district and included it into that, you know. But that also may backfire on the PAP because, you know, the question is, were people there voting for Taraman or were they voting for the PAP, right? Because Taraman generally is much more popular than the PAP overall share lah.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean they got all those votes in Jurong, they'll necessarily get it with under Desmond Lee. It's not a given. When I saw the two lineups, just the two lineups, my sense is that PSP's got a good chance, and also from 2020 till today, my sense is that, I mean, some people make fun of Leong Man Wai, but I think he actually has a lot of support. People see him as the underdog. People can see in Parliament, they you know, Vivian Balakrishnan made fun of him saying comes from a lousy school and all that kind of thing. I think people have sympathies for him fighting for the people on the street. So they came very close in 2020. Possibly they have improved in the perception of the public since then in their performance in Parliament, Hazel and Leong Man Wai, and now Tan Cheng Bok coming back to stand. I was actually, one last point, I was surprised there wasn't another PAP heavyweight lah coming in to join Desmond Lee. It's mostly Desmond Lee lah, so I think it'll be a close fight.
Thank you. Pak Damanhuri, Bukit Panjang SMC. Paul Tambaya akan bertentangan dengan Liang Eng Hua untuk kali yang kedua atau kali ketiga? Kedua. Di pilihan raya 2020, Paul telah berjaya mendapat lebih banyak undi berbanding dengan pilihan raya yang sebelumnya. Dan di 2020, Liang Eng Hua hanya menang dengan peratusan undi 53% saja. Ya. Jadi apakah pada pandangan anda Paul akan berjaya di tahun ini?
Saya yakin bahawa peluang dia sangat besar untuk menang kali ini. Satunya ialah kita ada 5 tahun untuk berusaha memenang hati penduduk di Bukit Panjang. Dan alhamdulillah Dr. Paul dalam beberapa kali saya sempat ikut dia bila dia berkunjung ke rumah-rumah atau pergi waktu Ramadan kemarin dia berikan juada kepada di depan masjid. Dia agak popular saya lihat di sana di kalangan penduduk Melayu, penduduk Cina, sangat popular. Mungkin kerana mereka lebih kenal dia dan secara strategik kita lebih kedepankan Dr. Paul dalam banyak cara di social media dan ini membantu untuk memperkenalkan dia kepada penduduk dan kita dapat lihat dalam banyak kali kempen yang kita jalankan sekarang bila kita dah mulakan bahawa ya kelihatanlah lebih baiklah. Kalau pada tahun 2020 tu di mana kita buat keputusan last minute untuk switch dia daripada GRC kepada SMC dan dia dapat capai undi yang begitu besar. 5 tahun dia kerja di lapangan, saya yakin pasti akan ada peratusan yang dia dapat mempengaruhi dan mudah-mudahan kali ini kita dapat lihatlah bahawa SDP berjaya menang satu kawasan undi yang kita boleh bertapak insya-Allah.
Jadi bagi Tuan Damanhuri ini pilihan raya umum yang ketiga ya.
Ya.
Jadi apakah kita masih pada pendapat anda mempunyai persamaan atau level playing field antara parti pemerintah dan parti pembangkang? Misalnya ada dakwaan gerrymandering yang sudah mention earlier, garis masa pendek untuk pilihan raya, penggunaan POFMA dan serangan peribadi. Ya, jadi pada pandangan anda, apakah kita ada level playing field?
Masih belum level playing field tu masih agak jauh sebenarnya. Tapi dengan adanya social media, dia membantu untuk meluaskan sikit ruang untuk suara kita lebih sampai kepada masyarakat umum dalam bentuk podcast yang kita boleh buat, video-video, interview dan sebagainya yang langsung sampai kepada penduduk. Jadi ini membantu sangat. Tapi apa yang kita kalah, benda-benda yang tadi diberitahulah, gerrymandering sebagai contoh. Kita SDP suffer. Kita Dr. Chi 10 tahun dia bergiat di Bukit Batok, dan saya peribadi lihat bagaimana dia bertungkus lumus untuk menapakkan dirinya di sana, dan investasi yang kita buat dalam bentuk bukan saja kewangan tapi sukarelawan, dan kita dah wujudkan sekumpulan penduduk dari Bukit Batok tu. Sekali terus overnight dia hilangkan macam itu. Ini harus berubah, tapi kita tahu bahawa ianya akan berubah apabila lebih banyak lagi parti-parti alternatif menang dan kita dapat mempengaruhi beberapa daripada undang-undang, peraturan dan sebagainya yang dijalankan oleh pemerintah sekarang.
Okey, Pak Rahman, kita tukar fokus sekarang ya. Jadi bagaimanakah anda menilai prestasi ahli-ahli parlimen di penggal parlimen yang lalu? Siapa memperlihatkan prestasi yang lebih baik? Sama ada ahli-ahli parlimen parti yang memerintah ataupun parti pembangkang. Apa pendapat anda?
Kita lihat di penggal yang baru lepas ini, kualiti debate, perdebatan di parlimen sudah agak meningkat sedikit. Terutamanya di kalangan para MP, para anggota parlimen di bahagian pembangkang. Misalnya Mr. Leong Wan Mai dan Hazel Puah, walaupun mereka bukan MP penuh, mereka non-constituency MP, tapi isu-isu yang mereka timbulkan, perdebatan antara mereka dengan lawannya di PAP meningkatkan mutu perdebatan di parlimen. Dan ini menunjukkan, mereka membuktikan bahawa lebih ramai anggota parlimen dari pihak pembangkang itu boleh memperkayakan mutu debate, mutu perdebatan di parlimen. Dan prestasi mereka kedua ini menunjukkan mereka merupakan tentangan yang serius kepada PAP. Di pihak Workers' Party, kita lihat timbulnya leader of the opposition, ketua pembangkang. Mutu perdebatan pun juga meningkat sebagai yang kita harapkan daripada pembangkang yang tradisional. Ada juga turun naiknya. Cik Faizal mungkin tidak mengutarakan banyak soalan di parlimen, mungkin kerana ada masalah-masalah kesihatan. Tapi kita tahu perjuangannya selama bukan saja di penggal yang lepas ini, malah 15 tahun, sepanjang 15 tahun perjuangannya untuk menampilkan, memperjuangkan isu tudung, sehinggakan akhirnya pemerintah mengizinkan pemakaian tudung di kalangan jururawat. Jadi ini menunjukkan bahawa hadirnya lebih banyak anggota pembangkang di parlimen akan pertama memperkayakan mutu debate, mutu perdebatan, tapi juga membolehkan suara-suara rakyat disuarakan, kepentingan rakyat disuarakan di parlimen. Yang kalau dulunya tanpa ada pembangkang, kita lihat peranan seorang wakil rakyat itu ditukar sebagai anggota parlimen hanya menyuarakan pandangan pemerintah, iaitu PAP, sedangkan suara rakyat tidak disuarakan dengan betul.
Terima kasih. So turning to you and turning to the topic of manifestos. So in the past there have been some critique that the WP is PAP light. So I think the manifestos put up by WP has been very, very detailed. across a whole spectrum of issues. I think the SDP also has put up quite a detailed manifesto. Your thoughts on the manifestos of the opposition parties, any surprises, and how does that compare with that of the PAP?
So I can't talk for the manifestos as a whole, okay? I can talk about specific sections. I actually yesterday spent some time, because I was analysing public housing and the different public housing proposals, and I looked at the SDP NOM proposal properly for the first time. And I was really, really impressed by the level of rigor, analysis, open discussion about the pros and cons, trade-offs. Because the HDB issue, as everybody knows, there's no easy answer. Whatever we choose, there's going to be some sort of trade-off. And for both, for the WP, SDP, and the PSP as well, they all have their different suggestions. The PSP is something called the Affordable Home Scheme. SDP, as I mentioned, is the non-open market scheme. And WP, which has been pushing since 2019, the Universal Buyback Scheme. So these are the three main things under their public housing program. I think they are really well thought out. And if you just think back about 10, 15 years ago in Singapore's democratic history, there used to be this regular criticism that the opposition parties, they never put up anything serious as an alternative, right? They just talk a lot. They just want to be the driver on the side, or not actually contribute a lot to serious policy discourse. But I think anybody who looks at the three manifestos from those three parties, which I've done, you'll be terribly impressed. I was terribly impressed by actually the quality of policy analysis that Singapore has today from multiple parties. And as a Singaporean, gave me a lot of confidence that now we have different parties who actually have this thing. You asked mainly about the WP initially. I think there are many interesting things, but obviously the fact that they made recognizing the state of Palestine a key point of their manifesto, moving further than the PAP has done on that, I think is an important thing. Yeah.
So in your view, it is the contestation of ideas that produce good, in that there is robustness in the whole process, and you come up proposing different ideas that you think would work better than the prevailing idea.
Yeah, I think Singaporeans now genuinely have concrete alternative proposals, right? It's no longer a given that we will have this one party dominating all the political ideologies, dominating all the ideas, dominating the discourse, but actually you have serious concrete alternatives now, which is amazing. Which is really amazing. I think we should be happy as a country for the quality of our opposition parties' manifestos.
Thank you. Tuan Daman Huri, berpaling pula kepada isu credibility calon pembangkang. Ada beberapa ulasan mengenai peningkatan kualiti calon-calon daripada parti pembangkang. Sementara PAP pula telah berkata, berikan fokus kepada parti bukan calonnya. Jadi apakah sebab kenyataan ini? Apakah ia mengaku kalah? Apa pandangan anda?
Ya, mungkin ini satu cara mereka nak memesongkan perhatian. Hakikatnya ialah dah terbukti lebih banyak golongan yang biasanya menghindari diri mereka daripada parti pembangkang dah berani ke depan. Dan ini makan masa lah, satu proses kan. Dan Alhamdulillah kita dah dapat lihat parti seperti WP, kerana mereka dah berapa tahun kan dalam parlimen dan dah dapat 2 GRC, pasti akan menarik perhatian lah. Dan apabila mereka melamar seseorang, lebih mudah lah untuk diterima kan. Kita lakukan sama SDP, tapi kerana kita tidak ada dalam parlimen, mungkin tak begitu menarik lah. Tapi kita pun tak putus daripada berdialog dengan individu-individu yang kita dah target dan kita cubalah untuk melamar mereka. Dan ini adalah satu perkara yang akan menguntungkan dalam jangka panjang, kerana mereka-mereka inilah yang akan mengkuatkan lagi lah parti-parti politik pembangkang kan. Dan Harpreet sebagai contoh, saya ambil Harpreet kerana dia sekarang kan jadi macam star punya calon lah. Ini sesuatu yang akan membuka minda kan golongan seperti dia lah di luar sana kan, dan ini menguntungkan kita sebagai sebuah negara, bukan saja parti pembangkang kan. Jadi ya, ini satu yang positif lah.
Jadi you mentioned Harpreet, and Harpreet mentioned in one of the interviews by the press that asking him why did he move from being senior counsel to an WP candidate, and he mentioned that it's like wearing a badge of honor. Your thoughts on that? What do you think?
So I was actually at that press con. It was quite funny. It was quite funny because all of us like, alamak, why the ST journalist asking this question lah? The ST journalist, is it a stigma to join the opposition? Because this is like maybe a conversation from 2010 lah. You know what I mean? I think we've moved past that, and it was a very good response by we moved past that again from multiple parties. If you see the quality of candidates SDP puts forward, if you see the quality of candidates PSP and WP put forward, I think this idea of stigma, maybe it still exists in some small pockets of corporate life. Some companies, they don't know enough. They might be a bit worried, my employee joining opposition. But I think for the most part now, where Singapore is, that it's correct that there's people respect opposition candidates because we understand what it takes. We understand the courage, we understand the determination, and there's a lot of respect for fighting for a better future or at least fighting for an alternative future for Singaporeans, not just siloed into one possibility.
I think turning to some of the issues that especially the ruling party has to address, I think some of the difficult policy issues are issues like cost of living, the GST hike, and that PM Lawrence Wong had tried to say that I want to focus on raising income rather than addressing the cost of living. Income has to rise, higher than the cost of living. There are also the issues of immigration policies arising from FTA obligations or other immigration policies. How do you think the opposition parties are going to play this? Do you have any thoughts here?
Cost of living and inequality are for sure the biggest issues, I think, for people across generations, right? The young people in their 30s, 40s, sandwich class, people being possibly retrenched in their 40s, whether it's because of, migrant competition or possibly automation, their jobs being replaced. It's by far the biggest issue, and I think the opposition parties so far have been focusing on it. There are very specific policies in terms of GST, in terms of minimum wage that different parties have offered, and I think these are all very, very important policies. In terms of migration, me personally, I do think we need a more transparent and calibrated immigration policy. Right, so I think one of the big failures of the PAP, and I'm speaking as an Indian, I've got relatives across the spectrum, right? I got my dad's side. I'm fourth generation, from Malaysia, Klang side. Then I got my mom, first generation. I also have cousins who have migrated to Singapore in the last 10 years, new immigrants. So I understand the full spectrum of Indian migration here, and I think the PAP. It's mostly, I feel, it's sort of growth at all costs mentality that encourages huge amounts of immigration without understanding the impact on Singaporeans, right? Without understanding it, not just in terms of jobs, but also in terms of culture, identity, integration, all these things lah. All these things are very important, and so I think we do need a more calibrated, careful, transparent. I think transparency is very important. Immigration policy. I don't know if any of the opposition parties are really going to play big on this, but they're all sort of connected. Like these different issues are all connected actually in a way. Public housing also, because public housing also depends on what your level of migration is, what your level of population growth is. So they're all actually connected.
Tuan Damanuri, you want to comment on that?
Isu-isu seperti ini adalah isu-isu yang akan banyak diketengahkan oleh parti-parti pembangkang. Memang kos hari hidup sangat besar di kalangan pengundi. Mereka semua rasa tercepit dengan inflasi dan mereka tak faham sebenarnya kenapa pemerintah mati-mati nak naikkan GST dalam keadaan di mana mereka dapat rasa dengan bagaimana wang perbelanjaan mereka itu sangat terkesan. Dan kenapa mereka berdegil dalam isu kan mereka boleh sebenarnya kecualikan barang-barang tertentu, barang harian, tapi mereka tidak mahu. Jadi rakyat tidak faham lah. Dan cara mereka nak mengatasi ini ialah dengan voucher. Dalam bajet yang baru dibentang ada surplus 68 bilion. Tapi naikkan GST. Jadi rakyat macam bingung kan benda ni macam tak kena. Ini isu-isu yang kita akan banyak disuarakan dalam rally-rally dan sebagainya. Immigration sama sebenarnya, bahawa banyak daripada dan bila saya waktu musim hari raya kan banyak orang datang rumah, antara topik yang dibincang topik tentang bagaimana mereka dibuang kerja atau rasa seolah-olah mereka jadi minoriti dalam negara mereka sendiri dalam sektor-sektor tertentu. Dan ini adalah dulu anekdotal tapi sekarang jadi macam sesuatu bahan bicara yang hampir semua melalui tau. Jadi seperti apa yang dikatakan saudara kita ini ialah takkan tak ada sesuatu cara untuk mengawal atau memperbaiki sistem di mana kemasukan pekerja-pekerja luar ini dapat dilakukan dengan cara yang lebih adil. Jadi bagi orang biasa mereka lihat bahawa kalau mereka bawa masuk pekerja asing ni, pemerintah charge levy tau. Maknanya yang untung pemerintah. Jadi apa perkiraan mereka sebenarnya untuk mengawal, kerana mereka beralasan bahawa cara untuk mengawal ini ialah untuk levy. Jadi company-company akan lebih hati-hati. Tapi levy itu menguntungkan pemerintah. Jadi apa logiknya di sini kan? Takkan bagi golongan menteri-menteri yang bergaji berjuta-juta ini, itu aja yang dimampu untuk beri jalan keluar. Tak mungkin kan? Jadi ini isu-isu yang saya setuju akan jadi bahan perbincangan dalam election ini.
Dalam saya memantau komen-komen di sosial media dan bila ada perbincangan tentang isu-isu utama waktu PRU ini, isu yang paling sering ditimbulkan ialah kos kehidupan. Itu yang nampaknya utama. Selain itu, kenapa kos kehidupan itu naik? Banyak sebab-sebabnya. Antara lain ialah mutu pekerjaan, tahap pendapatan yang menekan dan menjadi kontributor kepada kos yang naik. Dan kedua, polisi-polisi pemerintah, GST, BTO flat, sampai kaum muda hari ini sukar untuk mendapatkan flat dengan harga yang berpatutan. Jadi it's existential cost of living ini, dan perlu diberi perhatian sama ada dari pihak PAP maupun dari pihak pembangkang. Saya juga terkesan bila Pak Sudir bercakap tentang mutu manifesto yang ditimbulkan. Kita lihat mutu isu-isu ataupun polisi-polisi proposal yang ditimbulkan itu menampakkan nilai yang lebih tinggi daripada manifesto-manifesto di PRU yang lain. Dan ini semua petanda yang baik. Dan ini juga termasuk nilai calon-calon pembangkang, kualiti calon-calon pembangkang yang nampaknya jelas lebih tinggi daripada PRU yang lain. Ini semua petanda yang baik untuk demokrasi. They are good indicators that the system of democracy we're having has taken up a notch or two higher than it was before.
Turning to another critical issue, and that's the US tariff crisis, which is a global issue. And Singapore, despite being a friend of the US, it's slapped for 10% tariffs, although not as badly as some of our neighbors. Now, there has been a lot of focus on this by the government. I mean, the question is, how big a threat is it? Is it really truly existential? Are there real fears, or is it being overstated? And I think that's been the critique on the other, from the other perspectives. So the question to you is, how do you think voters will react in light of this? Will they vote safe? And what does voting safe mean?
Okay, firstly, my apologies, but I'm not a real expert on international trade or something lah. But I think the basic thing about Singapore being one of the most trade-dependent economies in the world, actually, I think if there is a serious trade war, we will suffer lah, right? Now there are alternative arguments we can make about whether or not we should be that trade-dependent, whether we should be that closely linked to these global supply chains, and maybe actually this is an opportunity for us to promote our other economic drivers, the main one being domestic consumption. And one way to promote domestic consumption is actually to solve inequality, right? So if more money is shifted, Singapore has one of the worst wealth inequalities in the world. If more money is shifted from the rich to the poor, you will actually improve your domestic consumption because people at the bottom spend more. So I think if people actually look into the dynamics of the economy, then it's not at all clear that the PAP will benefit. But I think if people just listen to the rhetoric and the noise out there, then it has happened not just in Singapore, but it's happened in democracies all over the world where there's a flight to safety vote lah. People get scared, and when you get scared, you go back into the warm embrace of the parent, So it's hard for me to actually know which way it will fall. But I think you could make arguments one way or the other about how the Trump tariff crisis will affect the voting.
Saya rasa isu ini walaupun sedang pemerintah dah jelaskan dalam banyak ucapan Lawrence Wong, dia mengatakan bahawa ini masanya untuk kita berhati-hati, jangan tukar, jangan fikir tentang perubahan dan sebagainya. Ini memang satu taktik mereka lah untuk memastikan bahawa poin yang dibawa tadi, bahawa rakyat kalau dia cukup takut, nanti dia fikir 2-3 kali kan untuk undi pembangkang. Tapi di sinilah di mana kita akan membawa fokus pilihan raya ini kepada perkara-perkara asas yang lebih dekat kepada kita. Kalau kita betul-betul nak berdebat tentang isu tarif ini dan kesan dia, benda ni baru Trump dengan cara dia. Kedua, sebenarnya kalau kita lihat daripada perspektif, saya bukan seorang ekonomis, tapi kalau kita baca sedikit tentang isu ini, dia dalam satu bentuk menjadi cabaran, dalam bentuk lain buka peluang untuk kita sebagai ekonomi yang kecil, yang lebih nimble, yang boleh mengambil peluang terbuka yang mungkin khusus kerana Singapura ini ada dalam konteks yang tertentu boleh meraih keuntungan. Jadi ini satu tugas pakar-pakar ekonomi kita untuk lihatlah. Dan the elephant in the room is BRICS yang sebenarnya sekarang menjadi alternatif yang sangat besar ekonomi dunia. Pengaruh Amerika dan sebagainya, tidak semudah-mudah untuk Amerika memaksa negara-negara lain untuk setuju dengan apa dia nak buat. Sekarang dah ada alternatif. Cuma Singapura lambat sikit lah di ASEAN. Negara-negara Indonesia, Malaysia dah lebih mungkin mengambil sikap terbuka kepada BRICS. Tapi Singapura adalah negara yang sangat praktikal lah. Kalau kita harus buat keputusan yang mungkin alih kiblat kita sedikit, kalau itu baik untuk negara, mungkin pemerintah akan buatlah. Jadi ya memanglah dia akan mainkan isu ini untuk melarikan kan pengundi-pengundi, takut-takutkan pengundi dan sebagainya. Mudah-mudahanlah kita akan dapat tarik balik mereka pada isu-isu yang lebih pokok dan asas yang sebenarnya memberi kesan kepada mereka.
Can I add one more? Yeah. So you see, if it's true that a trade war is coming, or maybe it's already here, and if it's true that workers are going to suffer, which party do Singaporeans workers trust to protect them? Is it the PAP? The PAP, as we all know, when you think about businesses and workers, the PAP, since it was founded almost, or not when it was founded, it was strong labor union roots when it was founded, but certainly post-independence, they abandoned it. Post-independence, much more on the side of corporations. So if you look at the power dynamic in Singapore today, which is the PAP's philosophy, corporations hold a lot more power, and we're entering a trade war. If you look at the policies offered in these manifestos we talked about by the SDP, by the WP, by the PSP, which are the three parties I know better, much stronger protection for workers. Much stronger protection for workers. So if workers are going to suffer from a trade war, which party do you want? I think Singaporeans need to think hard about that.
Thank you. That's an interesting perspective.
For the longest time, I've observed the way many corporations operate and how they sell not just the products, how they sell to the customers. And I find three dominant forces to influence, to encourage customers to buy their products. The first is fear, second is uncertainty, and the third is doubt. Any corporation, or for that matter, any party that can sell on the basis of these three forces, fear, uncertainty, and doubt, could easily sway their customers or their voters to their side. And I think this is something voters need to be aware of when people make statements. Is it real fear, or are they really driving the voters their way so that the crosses go on their logos? Yeah?
Okay, I'm going to wrap up, and I think I'm going to wrap up by circling back to the first point I made, that this is a historic election for Mr. Lawrence Wong. This is his first GE that he's leading as Prime Minister. How do you think Singaporean voters will react to this? Because he's going to tell people, I need a good and sound mandate. But of course, this is a new leadership. He has his own style. He plays the guitar, for instance. So how do you think Singaporeans are going to react? Maybe you can start.
Just some personal bias. I actually know Lawrence. We overlapped in grad school for a year. So I as a person, I actually really like him. I think he's a very, very nice person. I think he has some constraints within his party, right? Because Lawrence is not a one-person party, right? So there are other elements within his party that I think people have to absorb all that. And of course, Lawrence also is in terms of the PAP's neoliberal philosophies, pro-business leaning, growth at all costs, that all those things, I think Lawrence also is very much a party man, right? He's not very different from that. So those things are a part of that. My suspicion, and I may be wrong, I think in this election, you are going to see voters possibly discriminating a bit more. And we've already seen it in the past that, popular PAP politicians get higher scores, the not so popular ones get lower scores. I suspect we might see that again this time, that Lawrence is, in terms of likability, popularity, actually does very well. So, guitar or no guitar, I think both ways, I think he's quite... So I suspect that we might see within the PAP as well, this is my guess, this election, I think voters are becoming more discriminating. We might see more discrimination even within the PAP. The politicians, they like getting higher scores. The politicians, they don't like getting lower scores, I suspect.
Okay. So I'm just going to go around the table and of one sentence, your advice to voters, what would you say?
Vote wisely.
I would say vote with your heart, vote for hope, don't vote for fear. Whoever you want to vote for hope for a better Singapore. Don't vote for fear. Don't vote out of fear.
Saya nak ingatkan para pengundi bahawa sebenarnya pemerintah akan dengar atau lebih dengar apabila kita melalui undi kita memberikan isyarat yang jelas bahawa kita ada benda-benda yang kita tak suka, benda-benda yang harus diperbaiki, dan ini akan mereka tahu apabila undi mereka berkurangan. Jadi walaupun Lawrence, mungkin kita suka dengan Lawrence, kita suka dia, cara dia, saya secara peribadi agak anggap dia sebagai seorang pemimpin yang lain daripada apa yang kita pernah ada. Tapi akhirnya ialah benda ni 5 tahun sekali. Jadi gunakan undi anda sebagai peluang untuk beri isyarat kepada pemerintah.
Okey, jadi terima kasih kepada ahli-ahli panel kita dan juga anda kerana bersama kami di episod pertama Wicara yang mengupas pilihan raya umum tahun ini 2025.